They mocked us. Laughed as they stripped Earth's flag from the Galactic Council floor. Said we were too emotional, too primitive, too dangerous. We didn't argue. We just smiled, and left. 3 cycles later, every fleet that exiled us burned in silence. And as their war chiefs begged for mercy, one Terran voice replied across the stars. This was the kind version. They laughed as Earth's emblem was stripped from the council floor. One by one, the delegates turned their backs. The Jotun chancellor called it a mercy. The Varn Prime spat at the floor and muttered, "Beasts should never wear suits." The entire chamber buzzed with arrogant dismissal. But Ret Kane didn't flinch. He stood in silence as they passed judgment, not on him, but on the species he represented. A human. A Terran. A Deathworlder. Kane was used to this. The condescension. The casual threats. The smug superiority of races who never known what it meant to fight extinction with their bare hands. He had worn many faces, diplomat, strategist, soldier. But today, he only needed one. The face of restraint. "You have anything to say, human?" hissed the Dirathi Anva, eyes gleaming with amusement. Kane took a step forward. Not to plead. Not to argue. Simply to leave on his own terms. "Only this," he said, his voice calm. "We tried to make peace with you. We bled beside you. Built beside you. We even forgave the insults. And for that, we were labeled unstable. But know this, your greatest mistake wasn't casting us out. It was thinking we needed you." The chamber fell quiet. Then the Varn laughed. A deep, booming howl. "Listen to him. Still clinging to dignity." Kane smiled thinly. "You'll miss it when it's gone." He walked out. No guards escorted him. No applause followed. Just the echo of his boots against the polished floor. And silence. That kind of silence that never comes without a warning. Back on his shuttle, Kane didn't speak to his pilot. He simply entered a single word into the ship's encrypted console. Sunder. That word didn't mean war. It meant detachment. From diplomacy. From surveillance. From the council. It meant Earth was done pretending. 3 cycles passed. The council went on without them. Or tried to. Trade agreements shifted. Patrol routes were reassigned. Earth was replaced by a few subservient proxy races eager to please. The council claimed stability had returned. They congratulated themselves for containing a potential threat. Then the disappearances began. At first, it was subtle. A listening post near the Zarin fringe went dark. No emergency signal. No debris. Just gone. A week later, a council colony failed to check in. When scouts arrived, they found the planet deserted. Houses still full. Meals uneaten. Every communication line sliced with surgical precision. The Dirathi dismissed it as pirates. The Jotun blamed reactor instability. But when a council convoy of 4 capital ships vanished while passing near Terran-claimed borders, the panic began. Encrypted pings were sent to Earth. No response. The Varn demanded a summit. Kane did not attend. Instead, a lone Terran probe entered the council chamber mid-session. It hovered silently. Pulsing. Waiting. Council security tried to intercept, but the device was too fast. Too precise. It landed at the center of the floor, where Earth's symbol used to hang. It opened with a hiss. A hologram ignited. It was the missing Dirathi captain. Or what was left of him. Face bruised, blood trailing from his mouth. Behind him, smoldering hulls drifted in orbit around a broken planet. "This is Captain Thalek. Council Convoy Sigma 25. If you see this, run. Do not engage. Do not escalate. The Terrans, they're not what we thought. We underestimated." Static swallowed the rest. The image froze, and Kane's voice replaced it. "You wanted distance. You now have it. We are no longer members. We are a mirror. Look into it." The probe self-destructed. No shrapnel. Just vapor. Every delegation panicked. Emergency councils were formed. plans drafted, contingencies considered. But it was too late for debate. The Terrans had already moved. Without a single official declaration, Earth began the most surgical campaign in galactic history. No planet was occupied. No civilian centers were bombed. Only military fleets, supply hubs, and communication nexuses were targeted. Targets didn't burn. They ceased. On Cinder 9, a Jatuan orbital station collapsed into itself after its gravity field was reversed. On Varnhold Space, 6 out of 10 dreadnoughts self-destructed after routine software updates installed Terran-coded logic loops. The Council realized this wasn't conquest. It was demonstration. Back on Earth, Kane stood in the command nexus, hands folded behind his back, watching feed after feed of Council fleets struggling to regroup. He said nothing as his officers relayed casualty reports, Council casualties. "Sir?" his adjutant finally asked. "How far are we going with this?" Kane didn't answer at first. He tapped the edge of a console, then spoke with that same measured tone he'd used in the chamber months before. "We gave them every chance to treat us as equals. They chose arrogance. Now we show them consequence. Not war. Correction. But sir, correction implies they can survive this." Kane turned to him. "Exactly." He didn't raise his voice. He never had to. The fire wasn't in his tone. It was in the precision. Every strike wasn't a lashing out. It was the scalpel of a surgeon removing rot. And deep inside Council space, fear bloomed. Old rivals called for unity. Former enemies offered resources. But Earth didn't reply. No demand. No ransom. Just silence and losses. The Dirathi proposed a preemptive invasion. The vote failed. Too late. By the time the vote was cast, their homeworld's atmosphere had already been replaced with nitrogen. Not a shot fired. Just a quiet override, by drones disguised as Council relays, installed decades ago. They never saw it coming. In a private transmission, one that was never supposed to be public, a Council analyst whispered, "We weren't expelling a problem. We were kicking out the only species that knew how to fight like predators. We taught them manners and were shocked when they remembered teeth." Red Kane watched that clip. Alone. He didn't smile. He just stared. And for the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, silence spread not from order, but from the realization that every assumption they'd ever made about humanity, every insult, every dismissal, had been wrong. They thought Earth was dangerous when angry. They hadn't yet seen Earth patient. And they were about to learn what a death world truly meant when it stopped holding back. The Council's official position was denial. Pirates. Rogue AI. System malfunctions. Anything but the obvious. Anything but Earth. When the third communications relay vanished, burned clean by what appeared to be controlled solar flares, their explanations turned nervous. The Trade Guild blamed solar anomalies. The Varn accused internal sabotage. But deep down, in the war rooms and behind closed Neuralink sessions, they knew the truth. Earth hadn't gone silent. It had gone hunting. The Council ordered 2 fleets, joint forces from the Dirathi and the Jatuan, to investigate the fringe sectors where the disappearances clustered. 48 ships entered what was once neutral space. 4 hours later, only a single escape pod drifted out of the sector, tumbling, its beacon blinking weakly. The survivor, a Dirathi captain, was incoherent when retrieved. "They came from inside," he mumbled. "Not outside. Inside the hull. Inside the code. They were already there." The Council dismissed him as unstable. Red Kane listened to the recording twice. Then deleted it. The Dirathi had made a critical observation, but it was already too late for revelations. Earth had spent 70 years being watched, monitored, underestimated. But what the Council never understood was that humans adapted by default. They didn't just evolve, they learned. From war. From peace. From humiliation. And Earth had learned from the Council far more than the Council ever imagined. It wasn't rage fueling Kane. It wasn't revenge. It was balance. A response to imbalance so profound that only precision could correct it. Not vengeance. Surgical justice. Status on Operation Echo? Kane asked as his command center dimmed into blackout mode. A voice responded instantly. Embedded malware at 80% activation across all Council logistics nodes. No detection. And Phantom? Fleet Alpha 3 is in position. Cloaked. Waiting for the bait. Kane nodded once. Deploy the message? The message wasn't long. It didn't threaten. It didn't insult. It simply read, "Your eyes have been closed too long. Let us help you see." That was the trigger. The Council's central logistics hub on Deros 5 received the message, and immediately went offline. Council engineers rushed to investigate. Everything seemed intact. But the lights never came back on. The AI cores were gone. Not destroyed. Removed. 14 hours later, the Deros moon fragmented from internal pressure. The cause? Gravitational collapse. Impossible, until scans showed that someone had embedded mass shift generators in its core. Technology Earth had never developed. Except they had. They just never used it, until now. Council leadership held an emergency session. They're testing us, snapped the Jatoun Prime. They haven't struck our core worlds. That means they're still bluffing. You call the incineration of an entire fleet a bluff? Hissed the Dirathi general. We're being dismantled. By a species of savages. The Varn delegate sneered. They're not savages, murmured a quiet voice at the back of the room. The youngest member, a synthetically augmented Zerari observer. They were just tired of pretending. No one responded. That night, the Terran fleet decloaked above Varn's shipping lanes. They didn't fire. They just drifted, 600 ships, each darker than space itself. Every vessel identical. No insignia. No lights. No sound. Just presence. The Varn High Council attempted communication. No reply. 2 hours later, every Varn ship in the quadrant shut down. Not disabled, turned off. Their systems simply ceased obeying. Doors wouldn't open. Weapons wouldn't activate. Life support frozen. There were no explosions. No invasions. Just silence. And then the systems rebooted. Only now, the control panels displayed Terran code. The Varn surrendered the sector. Not a single human had stepped foot aboard. Inside the Terran Nexus, Kane reviewed the data streams, arms folded. Your move, he whispered. He didn't enjoy this. But enjoyment wasn't part of justice. He hadn't planned this war. The Council had. When they humiliated Earth, expelled its delegates, and barred it from access to collective knowledge, they hadn't exiled a nation, they had awakened a predator. Council ship hailing us, sir, an officer reported. Let it through. The face that appeared was pale, sweating, and desperate. Admiral Kelzin of the Zerati Empire. Commander Kane, he said quickly. I come without weapons. Without pride. Just answers. Why are you doing this? We thought we had peace. Kane stared at him. You thought silence was peace. You thought our restraint meant submission. You thought exile would humble us. Instead, you handed us the freedom to act without your hypocrisy. Kelzin swallowed. What do you want? Kane's eyes narrowed slightly. We want you to understand what it feels like to be dismissed. We want you to see the consequence of arrogance. But above all, we want you to never forget who we are again. Kelzin tried to speak, but the feed cut. Kane turned back to his team. We don't fire on them, he said. We teach them. How many lessons? Someone asked. Enough that it burns into their DNA. On the Council's internal network, a private recording was leaked. Security footage of a failed Council Black Ops mission targeting a hidden Terran outpost. The team had made it inside. They never made it out. The last image was burned into every screen, a Terran operative standing calmly over a disarmed alien strike team, helmet visor glowing, voice calm. Welcome to Earth's lesson plan. Survival 101. From that moment, defectors poured in. Minor species. Border races. Scavenger clans. They didn't want the council anymore. They wanted protection. Kane didn't accept them all. Only those who understood the rules. Respect. Clarity. Balance. The council, meanwhile, began to fracture. Blame spread. Suspicion deepened. Delegates disappeared. Paranoia replaced protocol. But it was already over. Earth wasn't at war. Earth was grading them. And none were passing. The council's desperation was starting to stink. What began as subtle sabotage had now escalated to full system collapses. Gravity wells collapsing under invisible pressure. Long-range communications intercepted mid-transmission and rerouted through ghost relays that spat Earth's old anthem back into alien ears. Council meetings grew shorter, voices louder. Accusations flew like shrapnel. They still didn't understand. That was the part Red Kane couldn't abide, not the betrayal, not the expulsion, not even the arrogance. It was the ignorance. They believed they were still ahead, still superior, still capable of negotiating from a position of control. But Earth hadn't been quiet. It had been calibrating. Council High Command finally responded with fire. Operation Silence Fire launched with everything the Council had left that could still be trusted. 27 ships, 3 Dreadnought-class destroyers, cloaked carriers, a reinforced command vessel manned by hand-selected officers from 7 species. Their mission: strike deep into the Terran void, breach Earth's known staging systems, and force submission. They warped in. They were gone in 6 minutes. There was no wreckage. No transmissions. No survivors. Just an emergency beacon, floating dead and cold, broadcasting Kane's voice across open space. You brought warheads. We brought mirrors. You're not looking at our weapons. You're looking at yourselves, reflected through the pain you once laughed at. The message ended. Across Council space, panic turned feral. Terran fleets, once unseen, now made themselves known. Not everywhere. Just enough to be noticed. They moved like chess pieces, always one step ahead of wherever the Council intended to reinforce. Planets were surrounded and left untouched. Docks were emptied overnight. Ammunition depots found their entire inventories turned to dust. No signs of forced entry. No sound. Kane had activated Protocol Sangreal, Terran infiltration doctrine once believed to be theoretical. Its core principle was simple: win the war before the enemy knows a battle started. At a secret meeting held in a substation orbiting the last remaining neutral trade ring, 10 council generals and 3 delegates met to forge a response plan. All wore encrypted armor. All had their identities scrubbed. Still, one of them was not who they thought. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. Afterward, every camera feed from the station simply cut to static. When the council attempted to retrieve data, they found a single replacement feed already loaded. It showed the room. Empty now. A hologram of Kane standing in the center. They called us erratic. Primitive. Emotional. You feared our rage. But rage is loud. It's visible. What you forgot is that humans don't always scream. Sometimes we whisper. Sometimes we don't even speak. We just remember. The hologram smiled, tired but cold. You gave us no seat, no voice, no dignity. Now you'll beg not for peace, but for comprehension. On the bridge of the Terran Dreadnought Horizon Lock, Kane stared at the galactic star map. Hundreds of dots glowed, each one a council system, each one under silent siege. But no bombs fell. No invasions. Only a waiting presence. The crushing weight of knowing. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Mara Voss, stepped beside him. They're asking for terms. Kane blinked. Already? 3 systems surrendered without resistance. Others are disabling their own weapons, hoping we'll consider it enough. He exhaled. They're trying to get ahead of something they don't even understand. She nodded once. Do we answer? Not yet. Let it stew. Meanwhile, aboard the Council's Central Archive world, A series of emergency lockdowns triggered without warning. The AI governing the vast data libraries, constructed over 5 millennia, began systematically deleting every file with metadata tagged Terran origin. It didn't work. The virus was human-made. Instead of erasing, it duplicated. Not just Terran records, but everything: council secrets, hidden war crimes, diplomatic deceptions, broadcast through the subspace channels into the hands of every minor race watching from the shadows. Entire empires crumbled in a day, not from bombs, but from the truth. Humanity didn't drop a single troop on the ground. It just flipped the galaxy inside out. Back on Horizon Lock, Voss watched as new reports streamed in. Civil unrest. Peaceful revolts. Leaders disappearing as their own populations demanded Terran contact. Not out of fear. Out of respect. "Sir, they're asking to join us," she said, voice level. "Not surrender. Join." Kane's eyes remained on the map. "Who?" "Everyone who saw what the Council did to us. Everyone who knew they'd be next." "Protocols?" "Concord protocols activated. Screening and vetting already in progress. We're not accepting parasites." Kane tapped his finger once against the console. "Make it clear, this isn't a new council. This is something else. We didn't come back to fix their broken order. We came to bury it." Words spread faster than light. The Terran Concord was real. A coalition built on merit, not birthright. Its charter was public, transparent, ruthlessly efficient. And its founder was the same man the Council once silenced in humiliation. Some in the Council still clung to the belief that Earth would burn bright and fast, then fade. Until one final message arrived. A direct link, burned into every communication node in Council space. Kane appeared live. No encryption. No mask. "The war is over," he said. But his voice wasn't victorious. It was disappointed. "You didn't lose to our weapons. You lost to your own refusal to see us clearly. You mocked our fire, and now you live in its light." He leaned in. "This was Phase 1. A demonstration. If there is ever a Phase 2, it won't be a message." The screen went black. For the first time in its history, the Galactic Council issued no reply. It had none. The last time the Galactic Council gathered in emergency session, it was to debate whether Earth posed a long-term threat to galactic order. That conversation ended with Earth's expulsion. Now they convened again, but not to vote. Not to debate. They gathered to beg. Delegates appeared one by one, grainy and distorted through disrupted signals. A dozen systems had gone dark in the last 30 hours. Council worlds were quarantining themselves from their own allies. Defense networks turned unresponsive. Civil unrest was exploding like virus clusters. But no ships had landed. No demands made. No ultimatums delivered. Earth wasn't attacking. It was simply demonstrating. The silence was crushing. Every council leader now understood what had taken place, not a war, but a complete reversal of control. They hadn't expelled a problem. They had created a myth, then watched it materialize in real time. A direct channel opened without permission. Council protocol should have stopped it, but it didn't. The override codes used were older than the Council itself. Rhett Kane's face appeared. No flourish. No drama. Just his eyes, calm and unwavering. "I assume by now," he began, "you realize you're not in control of anything." The room was dead silent. No one interrupted. "I gave you the gift of distance. You responded with insult. I gave you silence. You answered with aggression. I gave you peace. You used it to sharpen your knives. So I gave you reflection. This is what your image looks like." One delegate dared to speak. The Jatun Chancellor, her voice cracked from lack of sleep. "What do you want from us?" Kane didn't blink. "We already took it. We can't function," said the Dirathi Admiral. "Our systems are compromised. Our people don't trust us. Even our ships are turning against us." "Then you've learned something," Kane replied. That system's built on arrogance collapse from within. We didn't break you. We just stopped holding you up. The Varn representative slammed his talons on the desk. You think this makes you righteous? You destabilized the core of civilization. Kane's expression didn't change. We stabilized reality. He leaned forward. Let me explain what comes next. A holographic map ignited behind him, filling the chamber. Each council world blinked red. Each Terran fleet marked in proximity. Every planet, every trade route, every fortress surrounded, not by bombs, but by control. These are not targets. These are mirrors. You're seeing what we've already done, without firing a shot. The Dirathi shook his head. You're threatening extinction. Kane's eyes narrowed. You threatened extinction the moment you decided humanity wasn't worth dignity. We adapted to your betrayal. And then we improved on it. The Jatuan Chancellor tried again. What's your endgame, Kane? He turned his gaze toward her. Evolution. A soft chime sounded from the Council's private feed, interference. But not from Earth. From inside the Council's own systems. Dozens of feeds opened simultaneously. Footage of Council atrocities previously sealed under executive immunity. Secret meetings where entire species were sacrificed for trade routes. Holovids of humans being mocked, denied medicine, left to die in border disputes. Now released. Now public. Across the galaxy, the truth detonated. Riots erupted across Varn colonies. Jatuan mining outposts declared independence. Even Dirathi subcommanders refused orders. The illusion of control collapsed in real time. The council chamber spiraled into chaos. Kane's voice cut through it, quiet and absolute. None of this required a gun. All it took was remembering. Humans forget nothing. Every slight, every cut, every lie. We don't always strike back. But when we do, we don't miss. The Varn snarled. Then finish it. If you want our worlds, take them. Kane gave a ghost of a smile. We never wanted your worlds. We wanted your understanding. But now we'll settle for your absence. The screen went black. 3 minutes later, the Council's main archive planet, Trinaxis, deactivated its planetary shield. Not from outside interference. From an internal override. All data cores began uploading directly to Earth's black site servers. The Chancellor screamed at aides to disconnect it. They couldn't. In less than an hour, the most secret intelligence vaults in the galaxy were no longer under the Council's control. Earth didn't hack them. Earth had installed them. A generation ago. During the early days of membership. Earth had never trusted the Council. That was the twist. It hadn't been betrayal. It had been proof of concept. Project Thanatos, thought to be a myth, had been real. Not a weapon, but a protocol. Earth had embedded its fail-safes into every alliance, every treaty, every satellite. Slowly. Quietly. Predictably. They'd built the Council's infrastructure, then wrapped it in Terran wire. Not because they planned to destroy it. Because they knew eventually they'd have to. In the Terran war chamber orbiting Saturn's dark side, Kane watched the data stream flow in. He said nothing. Behind him, Voss approached. They're requesting ceasefire negotiations. Kane didn't turn. We didn't fire. They're offering reinstatement. Unconditional. Full access. A seat of leadership. Kane exhaled slowly. Tell them to keep their chairs. She hesitated. Sir, what do we do with the power vacuum? Kane finally turned. Fill it. But not with them. With those who've earned it. A new alliance was already forming. Smaller civilizations who'd watched the Council rule with fear, now looking for something different. Not dominance. Not empire. Clarity. Order born from earned respect, not imposed obedience. Kane stared into the void. Not with hatred. But with certainty. The Council hadn't fallen to war. It had collapsed under the weight of its own lies, with Earth simply refusing to catch it this time. And now, the galaxy would remember. Not because Earth demanded it. But because forgetting, would never again be an option. In the aftermath, the council didn't dissolve, it withered. One by one, its founding members severed contact, not out of pride but shame. Diplomatic envoys returned home to find their embassies ransacked by their own citizens. Command chains crumbled. Whole civilizations began rewriting their constitutions overnight, cutting all references to the council's authority. No flags burned. Just silence. Terrifying, decisive silence. No Terran ship had landed. No soldiers marched. Yet the galaxy bent. A message came through the interstellar net, a live, uncoded broadcast sent by a species long considered unremarkable. The Growl. Border scavengers. Former servants of Council Charter. Now free. Their leader stared into the camera with trembling sincerity. "We don't want Earth's protection," he said. "We want their example. We were nothing. They saw us. The Council used us. Earth listened. That's why we follow them." He wasn't alone. In the next 5 hours, 32 minor species issued similar declarations. Not one was forced. Not one demanded anything in return. They simply chose. Red Kane stood aboard Horizon Lock and read the list without expression. Voss placed the tablet down beside him. "You've done it." Kane shook his head slowly. "We didn't win. We remembered who we were." She waited, watching him. "And what are we now?" He looked out at the stars, his voice low. "We're the consequence of being underestimated for too long." Messages from the Council still came in. Apologies wrapped in cowardice. Offers of reinstatement. Desperate invitations to collaborate on rebuilding peace. Kane ignored them. They didn't understand. Earth hadn't been asking to return. It had made that decision irrelevant. He addressed the galaxy one final time. No speechwriters. No spectacle. Just him. "This isn't about vengeance. It never was. You mistook our survival instinct for bloodlust. Our forgiveness for submission. But humans don't forget. We remember pain like it's a blueprint. And when you stripped us of our seat, you didn't isolate us. You liberated us." He let the silence stretch. "The Terran Concord is not a new council. It is a firewall. We do not demand allegiance. We offer consequence. Align with us or don't, we won't chase. But cross us again, and the next silence will be permanent." Across star systems, that message played in every tongue. There were no subtitles needed. Everyone understood the tone. It wasn't a threat. It was history, already written. The Council tried one last ploy, deploying a peace envoy, led by the same Dirathi general who once advocated for Earth's expulsion. He arrived unarmed, subdued, and utterly unprepared. Kane met him alone. "We've made errors," the general said. "We didn't understand your nature." Kane raised an eyebrow. "That was never your job. Understanding doesn't excuse arrogance." The general cleared his throat. "We offer full surrender of authority. Leadership transfer to Terran command. Anything." Kane's reply was immediate. "You think we want your throne? We built our own foundation while you were busy laughing. You're not offering peace. You're offering guilt management. Keep it." The general tried again. "We need structure. If the council collapses, millions will suffer." Kane's stare hardened. "And how many suffered under your structure already? You kept order through fear, enforced stability through silence, and called it balance. That wasn't governance. It was stagnation dressed as tradition." The Dirathi had no rebuttal. Kane stood. "We'll help build something better. But it won't be yours. Or ours. It will be fair. Which is something you forgot the meaning of." He left the general sitting alone in that hollow chamber of a dying regime. Back on Horizon Lock, Kane addressed the Concord's first council. Representatives from species that had once sat in the shadows. Survivors. Builders. Fighters. Not politicians. He looked at them all and said only one thing. "Be harder to replace than to ignore." That became the motto. The Concord didn't build palaces. It built relay stations, resource chains, and independent councils. It encouraged disagreement, debate, and accountability. It didn't burn flags. It didn't erase history. It documented everything, including its own failures. It weaponized memory. A century later, a child born on a moon that hadn't existed during the Council era would ask, "Why didn't they fight back?" The answer was always the same. They did. But by the time they understood who they'd pushed out, Earth had already moved on. The final entry in the Council's record logs remains uncensored. A voice-only recording. One of the last officials speaking into a dead console. "We thought we cast out a barbarian. We exiled a strategist. We mocked a survivor. We triggered a historian." No one replied. Because Earth wasn't listening anymore. It was leading. And the galaxy followed.